appreciate that introduction and appreciate being here with all of you today. The goals of the United States Patent and Trademark Office align with the goals of this organization and of this conference. What we want to do as an organization is to incentivize more innovation, especially in key technology areas like energy, like climate. We want to do that from the big companies as well as from the small inventors and the small to medium-sized enterprises. We want to do it in the innovation hubs as well as in underrepresented areas of our country. And then importantly, we want to make sure that all that hard work is protected, both in the United States and in other countries. And we need to make sure we bring it to impact, especially in the energy space. The US Constitution and the founders of our countries understood the importance of intellectual property. It's written into our Constitution, and the founders knew that by protecting all of your great ideas, that is the key to moving your ideas to reality and to creating public good. So I'm going to have the pleasure of speaking with Suresh in a few moments, and he will tell you about his own experiences with the intellectual property system. Before then, what I'd love to do is share a few statistics with you and then do a little bit of myth busting around the patent system. So we know that innovation is the primary driver of the US economy. It generates almost $8 trillion in GDP. 44% of US jobs are in IP-intensive industries. So those are just not industries where people had good ideas and they went to market with them. They're industries where people took the time to protect that innovation. Wages in IP-intensive industries are 97% higher than in any other industry, 97% higher. In terms of startups, individual inventors, I know many of you in the audience fall into that category. If you get protection, if you get patents, your access to funding is higher, you're more likely to go public, and you're less likely to go bankrupt. Just a few stats on that. If a small company has a patent, just one of them, VC funding increases by 76% over 3 years. IPO funding increases by 128%. Employee growth by 36% over 5 years, and sales by over 80% in 5 years. So again, this is not just the innovation. I know you're all innovators or investing in innovation. It's the act of taking that innovation, using the resources that we bring to you, and protecting that innovation. So in all of this, we want you to see us as your innovation partner. And I will say this now, and I'll probably repeat it again, but in your materials, we provided a URL that can connect you to the resources that we offer. It's a brand new website that we just rolled out to make sure that we're connecting with you where it matters and that you have resources to the knowledge you need, to pro bono attorneys if you don't have the money to hire an attorney to do the protection, and to all the resources so that you can protect your inventions. Little myth busting, and then I'll get into my interview. One of the things we often hear is, I want to focus on my business now. I've got to focus on that. I've got to work on my ideas. I'll patent later. For those of you in the audience who've been through the patent process, you know that just doesn't work. As soon as you start having discussions with potential investors, as soon as you start getting on stage and talking about what you're doing, you lose the ability to patent. So there's very strict rules about the timing. So I would just encourage you to think about patents early and often and make sure you're getting good advice on that. Another comment we hear is, I just can't afford to get patents. I would posit you can't afford not to get patents. They give you 20 years of protection, so when you have that early idea, many ideas that we've seen are ahead of their time. It gives you a lot of protection to actually realize your invention over time. It also gives you power. So if you're a small inventor or a small to medium-sized enterprise, you're going to be competing against some of the larger companies. They have market power, you need your power. Also, in terms of The fees, the USPTO has a fee structure that lessens the fees for smaller entities. And as I mentioned, there is access to pro bono attorneys who can help you through the process, give you free legal advice, and help you secure a patent without having to pay the cost of a lawyer at all. And that is a program that from day one I started investigating expanding so that we could make sure that everybody has access that needs it. So far, we've worked with 3,400 inventors, and small businesses, and have worked on 2,000 patent applications through that program. It's a start, but we are going to do much more. Another myth that sometimes we hear people say is, well, this is just an idea. I haven't made something yet, so it doesn't make sense to patent. Well, interestingly, historically, you used to have to make something to patent. In fact, in my office in Alexandria, Virginia, I have a light bulb that Thomas Edison submitted to the US Patent and Trademark Office to get his patent on the incandescent light bulb. So you used to have to submit a model to prove to the PTO that you had made whatever it was you wanted to patent. That has not been the case for a very long time. And in fact, it's most important that you patent early before you create a product. Get in there early to make sure that you have stronger patent rights. And I will also say that the goal is to take a product to market. It's not that you have to take the product to market. So as you know, there's many systems by which you could come up with a great idea, maybe sell it off to another company, maybe it's done through the government, but the mere fact that you're patenting your idea allows it to get to market. And that, in your space and energy, helps us solve world problems, but it also, within the US, helps create jobs, helps foster our economy. So I would highly encourage you to patent early and before you make something. Another myth, and this is actually a very common one, including in the very large organizations, is that you have to have a really groundbreaking idea to patent. And what attorneys do all the time is they go into large corporations and they do what's called invention harvesting. They go and talk to the really bright minds like yours and say, we realize you think this is obvious because it is to you, but it's not to the normal person. And so it doesn't need to be groundbreaking to patent. In fact, most patents are on incremental improvements. Think about the intermittent windshield wiper. Extremely successful patent. The inventor of that didn't invent the car, didn't even invent the windshield wiper, just invented a timing mechanism. So all those incremental inventions are important to patent as well. And I would just say on that to the extent that you need to reveal a subject invention, please be broad in terms of revealing it. I know under ARPA-E funding, that's one of the requirements. Please reveal as much as you can, any ideas you have. That gives you an opportunity to patent it, and if you don't want to patent it, it gives the government the ability to step in and to make sure that the hard-earned dollars that went into what you're doing, your hard work, benefits the country, that we can get out there, commercialize it, and create jobs and economic prosperity. The last one is the time to get a patent is so long that it may not be valuable to me. I would say on that, it does often take a couple years, 2 to 3 years to get a patent, but just having patent pending on your article will discourage others from trying to copy you, and it's also really important for funding, to be able to say that you have a patent pending, that if somebody invests in you, that there's going to be a way to protect that investment. I also want to make an announcement today. You are the first people to hear this. The US Patent and Trademark Office this week is rolling out a climate change mitigation. I know that's a mouthful. Basically what we're doing is we're saying, if you've got an invention that's going to mitigate climate change system, and the expedition process will cost no money to you. So there are ways to expedite patents right now. Thank you for that. So there are programs now where you can expedite patents, but in this important space, we don't want you to have to pay extra for that. We understand that, especially when it comes to energy, that we need to get that technology patented and we need to get it to market as soon as we can. So we want to, again, be your partner in all of that. And just to give you an idea of the number of patents that are filed in your space, There are about 40,000 patents filed each year in this space alone, and that's about 6% of the annual patents filed. So I just wanted to give you that data point. And with that, I appreciate your time, and I'm going to invite Suresh onto stage so we can talk about his story. Thank you.
Thank you for those welcome remarks, Director. You know, and if I could add this, I just heard the clapping. I was clapping backstage. I just want to point out that is very timely and very impactful, the announcement of the Climate Change Mitigations Innovation Pilot Program. Have I got that right?
Well, and I will say that I actually had the government rush it, so I could announce it on stage today. So this helped be a forcing function for us getting that out there.
That's fantastic. It's a privilege to have this conversation with you. And in interest of time, I'll just lead in with the first question, if that's okay. You've been a successful patent litigator. You've worked with startups. You've worked with large companies. What is it that motivated you to take this role? And are there a couple of learnings from your past experience that you might say particularly inform you for success in this role?
Well, and I appreciate this. And this is a role that a lot of people lobby for over a long period of time. It's not something I ever had in mind that I would do. I was enjoying protecting both large companies as well as small to medium-sized inventors. And I found that was very rewarding. When I was approached about this position, I thought about whether I could make change and make impact. And I thought about what I had seen from my clients. A lot of it was competition from China, counterfeit goods coming into the United States, and them just throwing up their hands and saying, I don't know what to do about this. And so just thinking through that and thinking through how our country, we have to rely on incentives. We have to rely on our patent and trademark system in order to make sure that we're realizing as a country the benefits of innovation, whereas other countries rely on a lot of government oversight and a lot of government input and handling. And so I thought about that and thought, if I could make a change for the country, and this is why I did not lobby for this position, because I didn't want any one contingent to think, okay, we got our person there, she's now going to advance big business over small business or pharma over tech. I said, if I get this position, the country, the US is going to be my client, and I'm going to do whatever I can to make a difference. So that's what really inspired me, was I saw an opportunity for change. I thought that working across government, working with industry, that we could really make a difference for the country.
Fantastic, fantastic.
So you're an innovator. I'd love to hear your innovation story.
I'd be happy to share a brief set of details, Director Vidal. So I'm a chemical engineer by training. Going through grad school, I realized that I was actually much more interested in the application of the technology, if you will. One of my early jobs out of school was actually at Eastman Kodak Company. They had an organization called Manufacturing Research and Engineering. And it was very specifically about moving technology and innovation from the lab to scale-up activity at the manufacturing sites around the world. And that was, that's when I knew I was hooked. I was truly passionate about that. I was excited by it. And that's been the career arc that I've chosen, working with large companies, working with startups, and most recently with a national laboratory. In your opening remarks, you talked a lot about the U.S. economy and the role that innovation plays, an important role in innovation in the economy. Could you share some examples, if you will, about why having such a strong IP system is important for the United States?
And I appreciate that, Suresh. I discussed it a little bit before. I also know that we've moved from being a tangible asset society to being an intangible asset society. So along with that, the value of IP is extremely important for job creation, for exports. It's one of our largest exports. We import manufactured goods. We export intangible property. So for that reason, it's terribly important. And I'll give you two examples that brought it to heart for me. One is, and I'm sure people in the audience know this, but when Google bought Motorola, they paid $12.5 billion. A couple of years later, they sold off Motorola. The only difference is they kept the IP. So they kept the intellectual property. They sold it off for $2.91 billion. So if you think about the value of intangible assets, the value of intellectual property, to think that that much value was there between Motorola with IP and Motorola without IP drives it home. And I'll just give you one other example. So I was talking about how I worked with startups. I worked with this company, Sheets. It was two women they were basketball coaches, and one day they were sitting there feeling their athletic shorts and thought, wow, I wish I had bedding made of this. So they were filing for a patent. I got involved, helped them with their patent, and then all of a sudden there were goods being imported from China from the very same facility that made their goods. They were copying the exact same material and importing it in. They copied their trademarks. And they came to me and said, that this is going to destroy us. We're a startup. I had funded them, so had other people. But they said, if we can't maintain the market on this, this is going to completely destroy us. So the fact that they had a patent actually allowed us to block all of those incoming goods. We had to file a few lawsuits, but we did it very inexpensively, and we got those companies to stand down. So just the ability to carve out that space to compete in America, to realize your ideas, and not to suffer from knockoff goods and people who did not make the investments that you made, did not do all the thinking. I mean, they spent a lot of time on R&D proving that the materials were better for reducing your temperature at night, et cetera. So to me, that just, again, reinforces why IP is important.
Fantastic.
And I want to ask you about that very same question. So from your experiences as an entrepreneur, why do you think patents are important? Because you're an inventor on 30-some patents?
That's right,
Okay.
Director Vidal. And honestly, it's about value. And really, that's simply put, that's what the patent really delivers, as you very eloquently put. I think, the process of getting the patent informs you about how to articulate and how to differentiate the value proposition of what it is that you do. And speaking just from experience, we were able to land venture capital funding for a couple of my startups, and it was really based on the patents. And likewise, we've had a couple of successful exits, and I really think a large part of the value that we were able to realize was because we had a patent portfolio.
Well, and I appreciated that, and that was something that I hadn't thought about when you and I first started conversing, is that not only did it enable you to get the funding, not only was it something tangible, so when you sold the company, it wasn't just the people or the product, it was whoever was purchasing the company knew that they could protect that and could use that going forward. But just the idea that it helps you crystallize your ideas, I found that fascinating, and I have prosecuted patents before, so it brought that to life.
No, that's fantastic. There's a quote by you on the USPTO website, and if you don't mind, I'm going to read that quote because I found it phenomenal. To expand, protect, and commercialize U.S. innovation, we need to hear from creators, inventors, entrepreneurs, and all those with big dreams from every walk of life, in every state and region, especially those who have historically lacked access to our innovation economy. I also know that you are vice chair of the Council of Inclusive Innovation. Could you share a little bit more about the objectives of this council and what you're doing in terms of inclusion and diversity at the USPTO?
Well, and I appreciate that, and I was backstage and I was talking about this, and I had mentioned that the secretary chairs it, and the people backstage said, oh, you met the secretary? And I said, oh, I work for the secretary. And I realized that we were talking about different secretaries. They were talking about the Secretary of Energy, and I was talking about the Secretary of Commerce. So this is a big initiative that we have to really meet people where they are. It's something we're going to roll out soon. The website that I mentioned, that's the URLs in your materials, that helps connect everybody in this audience with the information they need, with potential pro bono counsel, so that everybody here, whether you're part of a university and already have the ability to connect or whether you don't, you all have equal access to the innovation ecosystem. So we are doing a lot more on that. We host programs to teach K through 12 educators because we want to incentivize and create innovation at all levels and really reinforce how this country started as innovators who are going to innovate and bring those products to market.
That's fantastic. We're almost out of time, so if you don't mind, I understand that you typically like to end every talk with an ask of the audience. What is your ask of this audience?
So the most obvious one is please solve all of our problems. I'm so glad that everyone in here is focused on the things that are really going to make a difference for this country. And in doing that, please patent. Please raise your subject invention so that if you don't want to patent, that at least the government can patent, because we want to not only solve all the, we want to solve all the energy issues, all the climate change issues, but we also want to make sure that we're creating jobs for people in the country, that we're raising the GDP, that we're creating economic prosperity. So please, please connect with us and patent. Two other things: international standards are extremely critical for our country. It's a way in which countries are competing, and right now China has announced that they're going to be #1 when it comes to standards, which will give them the ability to control things that we want to make sure that we're in that space as well. So does Europe and other countries. So please think hard about getting involved in standard setting organizations and making sure that where standards are being set around your technology, that the U.S. has a seat at the table. And lastly, you're all models of innovation. So to the extent that you can get involved, when you go to our website, you'll see not only ways that we can help you, but how you can help us. Get out there as a role model. Talk to the schools. Let the kids know how exciting it is to innovate. So thank you for all of that.
Thank you, Director Vidal. Thank you for your remarks and for the opportunity for this dialogue. And thank you for everything that you and your team are doing to keep U.S. on the forefront of innovation. I think the vibrant innovation economy is a key to success for the United States. So with that, thank you to the organizers for this opportunity, and thank you to the audience as well for your time. Please enjoy the rest of this conference.
Thank you.